Welcome to April Anger 2025. It's been a journey, but we've finally made it. Our first match is going to be Byleth against Ganondorf. So in April Anger, this is an annual amiibo tournament that we do. And in case you're new, you should know that Byleth was the winner last year. Ganondorf, of course, was not the winner, but he still did pretty good, being an amiibo who hits really hard, which is especially beneficial because the amiibo have a hard time comboing. Byleth is actually rather similar to Ganondorf, effectively being the version of Ganondorf with more range and less crippling slowness. They're actually doing a pretty good job of keeping it even. I say that Byleth just got her skull removed from her body. Not really, but it's a very visceral punish from Ganondorf there. Forward smash at the ledge. It is a strong move. Byleth does not go off stage. That's good for Ganondorf because he's very weak when he's trying to recover. Ganondorf forward smashed the wrong way. He was able to not die. So he's got that going for him. That and, of course, that he took the first stock. Not necessarily an indicator of how the game's gonna go, though. That's just how Ganondorf gameplay goes. He's the character who, in general, needs to hit you the least in order to kill you, which heavyweights kind of specialize with as a genre, but Ganondorf is definitely the extreme. Byleth not trying to catch Ganondorf with her up B, it's something that I've at least seen a lot of Byleth go for. Byleth actually went off stage to edgeguard Ganondorf, but he wasn't making it back anyway because he didn't use his air dodge to recover. Byleth very low on shield, almost getting killed by forward smash. Ganondorf does not SD off the side, sends Byleth right back off. Successfully makes it back down to the ground. Byleth just seemed to let him do that. Both characters barely missing each other there, but Ganondorf's move came out first. And a neutral area near the side is going to kill Byleth again. Now, again, for any new viewers, the first matches in the tournament are only a best of one. So Byleth could potentially be on her last stock of the tournament. If she were to die here, first of all, I wouldn't say that would be any sort of shame. That's just kind of how Ganondorf rolls. If you do not pay attention to him, then, or if you don't regard him as a threat, then he will randomly kill you and you'll wonder what's wrong with yourself. Just how the character goes. Byleth did make it into the tournament, which not all characters did. Down smash instead of Warlock Punch, it looks like it's going to be enough. That game goes to Ganondorf. A little surprising. For our second match, we're going to be having King Dedede against Bayonetta. Alright, looks like they're going to be on Animal Crossing Town. I can never remember the official names for all these stages. So I will say something about this matchup, is that this is probably going to be a very tough match for Bayonetta. The Bayonetta amiibos have definitely struggled a lot. Partially that is because of how their character is. And yes, in case you didn't know, there are two Bayonetta amiibos. This one's named Bayonetta, the other one's Baytuta. For more details on that, watch some of the pre-season videos. I talk about it way too many times. Anyways, Bayonetta is a character who, in order to function, you need to hit a lot of moves in a kind of technical manner, but King Dedede just hits you with an enormous hammer. He's not like the predicted to win champion normally for this sort of thing, but he always does at least well, partially due to the fact that he is an enormous penguin with an enormous mallet. He didn't even use it there, he hit Bayonetta with his headbutt, and that's enough to kill her. When you're at a high enough percent, of course. Raw forward smash, barely missing Bayonetta. If Dedede was a little bit closer to the platform, it probably would have hit. Bayonetta starts up the Bayonetta combo, and she misses one of the hits and gets intercepted by King Dedede for her trouble. Also, I just remembered the name of the stage is Smashville, so in case you were curious, I just saved you having to look it up. You were going to do that anyway. I can't imagine too many people do. I do so much fact-checking, and I can only imagine that most people just don't care. But that's what it's like to have integrity, something we need need to see a lot more. Up smash is going to catch King Dedede's jump. That's going to launch him off the top of the screen to his death. Bayonetta almost getting killed again herself. King Dedede's up air is definitely a kill move. You have to be at a little bit more percentage than Bayonetta was at. And King Dedede actually getting punished for using his up special. You don't see that too much. A lot of people tend to just sort of whiff the punish on that. And I do get why. If you get hit by the move, it does actually hurt and has a lot of knockback. So you definitely don't want to mess it up. But that doesn't stop people from trying. Okay, so the move has multiple hitboxes. Use the up special, you crash down, all of those have hitboxes, and if you land near somebody, you launch out like little shockwave stars as a reference to the Kirby games. But those also flinch the opponent just long enough that King Dedede doesn't get injured. Up smash, Bayonetta seems to have gotten hit by a weak hit. She probably wouldn't have died, but it does, I assume, mean she took less damage. Dash attack is actually enough to kill Bayonetta. A little bit surprising, but it is a strong move. Better be, because it takes so long to come out. And next up on the docket, we have Ike against Villager. Possibly not a matchup to Villager's advantage, although being on Final Destination probably does help because Villager has a lot of horizontal projectiles, which most projectiles are normally horizontal, but not all of them. So the matchup not being great for Villager is in that in Villager's previous battles in the preseason, Villager seemed to land a lot of Lloyd rockets spawned in the opponent's face, and when that happens, you hit Villager, and then the rocket's hitbox activates, and then the rocket hits you. That's a little bit harder to work against Ike because, first of all, he's got an enormous sword, so he's going to be doing more damage than most other characters would. So you can still make the same trades, but they're not as beneficial to you. Also, of course, Villager not being a particularly heavy character, very liable to get killed very quick. And it's weird too, because I'd say that in normally any sort of like tournament play, this would be more the advantage of the Villager player, simply because Ike's recovery can get massively messed up by the projectiles. But the amiibo have a hard time capitalizing on that sort of thing. And Villager getting killed off the top of the screen. Villager has an amazing recovery, but you don't get to use it if you're hit into the blast zone. Ike's off stage, and he gets Villager with another recovery spike, the Ike special. Ike and Chrom, because they both have the similar op specials, and the amiibo tend to land them a lot, usually by accident. That's what happens when you have a really good recovery move. Villager struggling to get hit in. He actually does get a throw on Ike, and he gets a spike. I didn't think that Ike was in the right area to be hit by that move, but obviously I was proved wrong. Ike goes for the recovery, does not scoop Villager off the bottom, but he does still get some good damage on him. Not that any damage is bad, I suppose. Villager really trying to get that down air. I know that he had a really nice one earlier, but if you ever play this game and you have the objective of hitting the opponent with a certain move, well, while I can say it can be good for teaching you when a character's moves are useful, if you are trying to win a battle, it gets incredibly predictable very fast. So it's something that works better against computer opponents, which both of these amiibo are, because they are amiibo, because of that lack of adaptability. But if you're doing it against a real person, it'll give you a lot of problems real fast. One thing I wish you could teach the amiibo to do would be how to up special out of shield. Sometimes they'll do it, but it feels more like on accident. And even then, I wish you could somehow teach them what their to-go out of shield option should be. As a general tip, for any new character, if you're having trouble, for example, escaping pressure, then you can just use the internet to find out what their fastest out of shield option is, and that will help tremendously. Once you know what your fastest option is, you can just use it all of the time. Maybe with one or two other options if you want to not be predictable, or possibly also some out of field options will have like range restrictions and whatnot. But once you do that, especially since a lot of people online will just kind of mindlessly attack your shield, it won't get you to the very top, but it'll really help. Villager doing a great job of keep away. Suddenly, the momentum of the match seems to have turned. He's now getting a lot of damage off on Ike. And the forwarder is actually just enough to kill him. Color me surprised, but our winner is going to be Villager. And here we have Lucas against Inkling. Looks like we're going to be on Final Destination again. It's going to be a stage that you're going to be seeing a lot because since this is the tournament, we are using a slightly different rule set from the preseason. So anybody who's seen the preseason, you may notice that the stage selection is smaller because it's a tournament, and we do not want random stage variables to determine somebody's tournament run. Inkling with an amazing air dodge, although it probably didn't matter because Lucas wasn't going to hit Inkling, but his back air is a spiking move, so if you do get hit with it off stage, there is always a good chance that you just get spiked into the blast zone, so any ounce of prevention is not unwelcome. Lucas going for a very delayed ledge trump. I really don't think that was intentional. Now he is suffering from the predictableness of his recovery. Inkling goes for a wall jump and actually just barely jumps over Lucas's down smash. Lucas's down smash is a very great edge guarding move, and by that I should say ledge trapping. It covers diagonally down in front of him and it hits 3 times, so it's really good at hitting people who are trying to grab the ledge. Which I suppose is all you would ever want in a ledge trapping move. Edge guarding, I'm still not sure, because if you linger on the ledge for too long, you can still get hit by it, and then it would count as a ledge trap. I guess it kind of points out the non-scientific nature about some aspects of this game. Because again, this is a party game, but it actually also does work out very well for a competitive game, which most games can't, I have to say. It's either one or the other. Inkling choosing to not go off stage, instead lets Lucas recover, grabs him, throws him off, and starts the cycle over again. Clips Lucas with her recovery, but Lucas's PK Thunder does send him far enough that he's able to make it back. You can get real-life players with that often, simply because they may mess up the angle they need to recover. Especially people who do not specialize in Lucas, or I guess also Ness, because his recovery works the same. And there's the spike we talked about earlier, but Inkling got the tech and followed up with a forward smash. And Lucas seemed to have canceled his PK Fire. I'm not entirely sure how he did that. He triggered the sound clip, but he didn't actually throw out the projectile. So it's sort of the worst of both worlds. Inkling with an amazing impromptu combo there. Lucas probably wasn't going to get hit by that splat bomb, and even if he was, his forward smash can also reflect projectiles, so there was a chance that Inkling would be off worse for it, but she managed to make it work, and without getting hit in the face with a stick. Lucas is not going to be able to... He actually is! He got the perfect angle and the aerial drift! I didn't know he could make it from that far away. And again, just because he could doesn't mean he will every single time. If you mess up the recovery in any way, Lucas goes for the rope snake, but he's not close enough for the ledge for it to grab. That's interesting because I didn't think the amiibo were capable of using their tether grabs when they weren't within range of the ledge. Obviously they always have the option, but Lucas drifts backwards, uses all of his momentum to not get killed. Goes for a down air, unable to get it. And Inkling's recovery is faster, so she got back to the ledge first. Lucas actually footstooled her to death. That's really hard to do on Inkling. That special goes really far. And if you've ever played a Splatoon game, it's based off of the super jump. I guess I'd call it an ability. It's basically a good way of getting rid of respawn, making you walk back to where the action is happening. So, of course, for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, they made it a very long-range recovery, because it would be really disappointing if it wasn't. And another spike, but Lucas follows up with a grab this time. It's somehow weaving just around the Inkling's roller there. Pika Thunder at the edge is going to kill Inkling. I'm not entirely sure if those hitboxes worked, but obviously it worked well enough for Lucas. And up next, we're going to have Pichu against Kirby. Two lightweight characters. That doesn't mean that they can't hit hard when they need to. Pichu especially being the version of Pikachu that is effectively incredibly lightweight and coincidentally the lightest weight character in the game. But with the consolation of doing self-damage, but also hitting harder than you would expect a lightweight character to normally damage opponents with. Basically more of a high-octane Pikachu, if you will. And Kirby, of course, has been in the game since the very beginning. His special ability effectively being that he can copy everyone else's special abilities. Which, the programming work for that has to be just such a monumental task to undertake. Every time they need a new character, somebody has to open up the Kirby files again to make sure that he's still working right. And down smash is actually going to kill Kirby. Pichu has a great down smash, and Kirby is a very lightweight character. Pichu falling with a Thunder Jolt. It's more risky than Pikachu's version, because Pikachu's version does not damage yourself. But Pichu's does, so you really just can't camp out the opponent with Thunder Jolt. You really want every single one of them to hit, or at least have a good possibility of hitting the opponent. Forward throw is not going to kill. Pichu doesn't really have kill throws. I'm sure one of them will at a high enough percentage. And Kirby clips Pichu with one of the hits from his down air, hitting the spike, and that's enough to kill. If nothing else, if it caught me by surprise, I probably would die as well. Kirby resisting the urge to go into stone form while elevated above Pichu. Already puts him emotionally more mature than most other Kirby players. Not that down special is a terrible move for Kirby. It does turn you into a rock, and if your opponent tries to hit you through it, there is a little bit of some sort of damage resistance or negation. I always forget how it works, especially because it changes how it works between all the different Smash games. The one thing that is the same, though, is that when Kirby's a stone, you can always grab him. And Kirby almost got his recovery absolutely abolished there. He was able to make it back to the stage, which is good for him, but he is also at a very high percentage. So if Pichu just kind of throws out a whole bunch of random smash attacks, Kirby will probably die in the next minute, I'd guess. But Pichu is not doing that, so Kirby goes dangerously high. He does use the stone that time, but he doesn't get punished for it, so I can't knock it too much. Kirby using his multiple jumps to change his timing for when he's trying to land back from the ledge. Pichu spiking Kirby, that's one of the few moves that wouldn't kill there. Whenever you're taking knockback, and Pichu really just ran back and forth 17 times to get hit by a down air. Move trade there. Surprisingly, nobody was killed in that incident. By nobody, I mean Kirby, who's at 170%, which is normally the range you'd only see the super heavyweight characters to be at. Kirby with a good shield there. Didn't get the parry, but shielding is good enough, at least it doesn't get you hit in the face. Pichu getting the up throw, but then not using down special out of it. Pichu did get the up air, so I have to credit him for that, and there was a trade there. Oh, and Kirby tried to get an up smash out on Pichu, but he got grabbed first. When talking about Smash Brothers, the general design concept is that attacks beat grabs, beat shields, beat attacks. So you sort of have that triangle, rock, paper, scissors dynamic going on. But it is always possible to grab your opponent before they actually attack you. Not even getting the spike hitbox, but it dealt enough knockback to Kirby. Pichu takes this. And now we have Snake against Zelda. Should be a good matchup for Zelda, I'd say. Specifically because Snake has a lot of projectiles and Zelda has a reflector. Usually the solution for, at least, for example, Snake's Nikita, his side special, the little rocket he shoots out, you usually want to use that when your opponent's trying to recover, simply because it leaves you so exposed when you're doing anything else. But Zelda has a teleport, so she can actually teleport through the rocket. And her reflector is more of the one-and-done variety in that you can't just hold it out forever. Most reflectors you kind of can't do that with. Right there you can see she was able to, what looked like, deflect the missile instead of reflect it. That's probably an interesting interaction, specifically because Snake's Nikita, you can damage it to deactivate its hitbox for a little bit, and when you do that, Snake loses control. And Zelda's Reflector, Nehru's Love, does have hitboxes on it that can damage the opponents, so it is possible that she damaged the missile instead of reflecting it. Able to get a lightning kick on Snake for the first stock. Snake gets her off stage, and he shoots out a missile. Cancels it immediately, which does, coincidentally, because of gravity, send it in a good arc angle to try to hit opponents with. Goes very high, not punished by Zelda, but then he did immediately jump into her and get hit by another lightning kick. I don't think that lightning kick is the official name of Zelda's forward air and backwards aerial, but they are moves that come out at a good rate of speed, I guess I'd say, but if you land the spacing and timing just right, they hurt significantly more. So much so that if you don't nail the timing, they're very underwhelming moves, but that's also to make up for the fact that they are just so incredibly strong when you do get them to land. There you can see Zelda got the weak hitbox for it, and there she got the strong hitbox. The strong one was definitely a lot more impactful. See there, also, Zelda's down air works on the same philosophy. It doesn't have the lightning stun effect, but it does hit a lot harder if you can get the right hitbox to land. It's interesting though, because in my experience, I've always had a hard time getting the sweet spot of the down air hitbox, whereas with the lightning kicks, still calling it that, obviously they are difficult to land. If it was easy, then no one would ever miss them ever. But with the down air, if you miss the timing and you get the sour hitbox, you still end up with a spiking hitbox that has enough strength to at least seriously inconvenience your opponent. So it's not as punishing if you don't get it to hit. The sour hitbox is just better than the sour hitbox of the other moves. Both characters trading there. They both tried to kick each other at the same time, but Snake had a combo hit connect, and Zelda had a weak hitbox connect. She was able to get a forward tilt to close out the game. Not usually the move you see Zelda kill with, though. And here we have Kazuya against Sora. The last two DLC characters. I can assure you that as every time we do this, the brackets are determined entirely by random chance. I didn't manipulate the bracket in any way. Although now that I say that, I should mention that when I posted the graphic for the tournament, right after I did so, I realized that I had photoshopped it, since, if you didn't know, the Smash Ultimate game has an internal tournament format, which was also very convenient because it's where I got all the graphics from. I basically photoshopped out the old background and put in a very similar replacement, so I could stack the tournament, like all the amiibo characters in the way I needed them to be. The main difference, though, is that the internal tournament method only supports up to 32 characters, not 64 entrants, which is a problem for a tournament that has 64 entrants. What basically I did was I filled out the first half of the bracket, filled out the second half of the bracket, took a picture each time, photoshopped them together, and that's how we had our tournament graphic. But then I pasted them into the file in the wrong order, didn't realize through the entirety of editing, but I hadn't revealed anything else about the bracket yet, and it doesn't actually change anything about the matchups. Since it was the top half and bottom half of the bracket, it is effectively the same. It really just depends on which characters fight in which episode, which doesn't particularly matter when it comes to tournament ranking. So I kept it and just adapted. Kazuya starts a combo, and he only gets 2 hits on it. I will say that Kazuya, at least when I observed him in a lot of different environments, he gets a lot of kills by getting his up special while off stage. Not entirely sure how that's going to interact with Sora, a character who almost prefers to be in the air more than he's on the ground. Obviously, you have more moves when you're on the ground, and you do need to touch the ground eventually, so Sora does, but he is very floaty, has a very high recovery. Up special is able to kill Kazuya. Sora is at a very high percentage, though. Also, another thing to note about Kazuya is that he's the slowest character at jumping. And that's not a metaphor. It literally takes him over twice as long. Everyone has a 3-frame jump squat except Kazuya, who has 7 frames. Pretty sure the intention there is that since Kazuya has directional tilt attacks, including up diagonal and down diagonal, in order to give the players more time to actually get the right move, he takes a little bit longer to jump off of the ground. And it is interesting how that's had some pile-on effects for the rest of his design. His aerials all come out really fast, since it takes him so much longer to get off of the ground. And I guess I'm done talking about Kazuya for this tournament season, because Sora just won. And for our last match of the episode, we're going to have Cloudy against Pokemon Trainer. Guess I should explain these amiibo names. So Cloudy is the Player 2 amiibo that was released for Cloud, and Pokemon Trainer is a character slot who has 4 different amiibo. One for Charizard, Ivysaur, Squirtle, and for the Pokemon Trainer himself. Which I will say is a really cool way of doing it. The alternative would be that they fit all 4 of them onto one amiibo stand, which probably would have been a mess to go over. And also, it's a knock-on effect of Charizard being the only part of the Pokemon Trainer to make it into Smash 4, which is when most of the amiibos were made. Back in Smash 4, everyone who was in that game got an amiibo and it matched their character trophy in-game, which I will say was a cool touch. Smash Ultimate moved on to Spirits, which is fine. Mostly it's brought on because they didn't have the manpower to make all the trophies again. I will say that is a shame because I actually very much enjoyed the trophy gallery, but I do understand that sacrifices must be made at some point. And Smash Ultimate is, I think, at least currently, the best fighting game of all time. And in contention for the best game of all time. It gets harder to determine what makes a game the best. But Smash Ultimate at least has the sales to prove it. So you can't knock that. And it, of course, does also serve as Nintendo's one of their main highlight games. I believe when you look at the annual sale numbers, usually Smash Ultimate is right there in the top 5. Although I don't know all the numbers off the top of my head, I can tell you that the highest selling game is normally Mario Kart, which does also make sense. It's a racing game, so even if you don't know any of the other Mario games at all, you can still drive in a loop and throw stuff at your friends. I mean, items in the game, but I guess you could also invite friends over to your couch and then just throw garbage at them. Don't imagine they'd come back after that, but it is a possibility, I suppose. Great back air from Cloud there. I would have expected a forward air, but it would have come out too slow, and Ivysaur, well, Pokemon Trainer as Ivysaur, should have known to air dodge. Not getting spiked off the stage, barely able to bounce off of it. When you bounce off of an object, you do receive a slight reduction in knockback. It's not enough to kill all of your knockback altogether, unless, of course, you're able to tech and you do so successfully. But that, combined with the fact that a lot of your knockback gets spent on your way to the object, bouncing off of an object is a very good way of extending your life. Which is weird because it doesn't work in real life remotely. In fact, it should be, when you think about it, it should actually damage the characters whenever they bounce off of something. But this is a video game, so we don't need to be completely realistic. That is a weird time to change from Pokemon Trainer. Squirtle is a lightweight character, which means he dies faster, to stuff like Cloud's back air. So Pokemon Trainer made that decision, and he did suffer for it. Cloudy moves on. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. There is an entire preseason of videos if you're wondering what on earth is going on. And of course, we're going to have the rest of the tournament up, hopefully soon. So feel free to enjoy that when it eventually happens. Until then, though, bye.